planning that time ahead is important. My issue has been protecting that time after it's been planned and not moving it just because something else comes up that you think might be important. Like plan that time ahead and protect the crap out of it.
ADHD Rewired, episode 393. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We are here in August for our live Q&A, so welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you are listening to this on the podcast, I hope your August went well and September is going all right for you. All right, that stretches my brain every time I try to do that because it's just being in two time zones at the same time is tricky. And I might mention something about that in a little bit. But before we do, I want to introduce all of our panelists. So let's start in my top left corner with Moira Maybin, the host of the ADHD Friendly Lifestyle. How's it going, Moira?
It's going very well today.
Awesome. Good to have you here. And next to me on the other side of my screen is MJ Siemens, the host of ADHD Diversified. How you doing?
Doing okay.
All right. And MJ is also the new editor and post-production person for this podcast. Glad to have you here. Mr. Will Curb, host of, and it finally happened, that moment where my brain just goes, what's the name of his podcast?
Hacking Your ADHD.
Right? Hacking Your ADHD. That's right. Oh my gosh. It finally happened. It's the fact that it didn't happen until this point. How you doing, buddy?
So, getting over COVID, going on 17 days now. So it's apparently you can have it up to 6 weeks before it becomes that long COVID thing. So we'll see where I'm at in a couple of weeks.
Well, hang in there. Hopefully you're getting plenty of rest and family's doing all right.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe you'll have to have an episode called Hacking Your COVID. I know it's a real thing, huh? All right.
There's completely a coughing joke in there with the hacking and the ADHD.
I like it. Brendan, let's get you introduced since you cut in with a good joke.
I don't have a good joke because it's wicked humid in my office right now and I'm mostly sweating.
All right. Well, you can, if you have some questions that you're sweating about around parenting, you can check out Brendan's podcast, ADHD Essentials. And now we're skipping around. So we got to my left, Roxie Martin, who's one of our coaches. I didn't mention Moira Maybin is also one of our group coaches. So Roxie Martin's one of our coaches and the host of the upcoming podcast, as soon as Will gets himself a little bit better here, wait, what was the question?
Good job.
Did I do it right?
It sounds good. I like when you do it.
And that is the name of her podcast, in case you were confused by what just happened. Wait, what was the question? Roxie and Will are going to be doing that together. So Roxie, how you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome. Glad to have you here.
Thanks.
And we have Barb McDonough in my bottom left corner. How are you, Barb?
I'm well, thank you.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Now, Barb doesn't have a podcast yet, right?
Correct. Not yet.
But she does so many things to help make sure this one happens every week. All right. So since we're here with our live Q&A, let's dive right into it with a question. We have Aaron, who has a question for us about hyperfocus and passion. So share with us, Aaron, what is your question?
Hey, y'all. It's great to be on here. It's kind of like meeting a celebrity. This is really weird. But so my question is basically so a year ago, I was diagnosed ADHD. And for the last probably 6 months or so, I've been doing a pretty deep dive with all y'all's podcasts, lots of research online, lots of reading, to the point where it started to like crowd out I don't want to say crowd out, but like I focus on that more than I focus on the things that I up until recently, called my passions. I'm a big into music, so I really like doing that. And I feel like recently I've been focusing more on learning about the ADHD than I have on the things that like give me, pleasure, like music. So I was just wondering, since we have a problem with like prioritizing things, how you tell the difference between like things like a passion versus like a new passion versus like just a hyper focus versus like, like I don't want to like commit to say learning about psychology and like learning about my stuff like that if I'm just going to like fall off of it at some point because it's such a new thing, So I guess, like how do y'all kind of differentiate the two?
All right. So, well, first of all, congratulations on learning of your ADHD. I think one of the things that you are doing, and I think that a lot of people do when they are newly diagnosed, is what the research actually suggests that we want to be doing. And that's learn as much as you can about ADHD. It is a disorder that information makes a difference. And if you kind of think about it, like your whole lens of your life is now kind of recalibrating. And part of that recalibration process happens through understanding what all these things that you may have struggled with throughout your life, how ADHD has played a role in it. So sometimes we need to do that deep dive. I think that often for us with ADHD, the casual, occasional learning of something here and there is not typically how we go after things, right? We tend to go into the deep dive. So I guess my question is, when you say hyperfocus, what is your understanding of hyperfocus?
Well, I think that like a hyperfocus to me kind of seems like something that becomes like and not a negatively, but like a time suck where you like do a thing and then you blink and it's 6 hours later. I do that a lot with music. I do that a lot with a lot of things, honestly. But like I find myself doing that with like just like going down rabbit holes, the ADHD rabbit holes online, and like so I guess anything that really like makes you kind of not aware of the time, which is sort of just ADHD in general. But yeah.
Aaron, do you have things that you can anticipate? Like this is a sort of a hyper focus sort of minefield, or this is something that if I start this, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to like lose the next 6 hours doing this. Like, do you have those things?
Yeah, but like, that's just like a lot of stuff. Like, I feel like it's never like anything specific. It's just always like, oh, this is cool. And then I blink and it's like 10 p.m. And
okay. Because, there's the idea if you can sort of anticipate the things in your environment and that you're engaging in, that you may be more susceptible towards hyperfocus around, plan around it, so you can say, I'm going to play music, or I'm going to research ADHD, or I'm interested in how those two things work together, right? It's like, okay, like I have 3 hours right now and I'm going to just allow myself to research that question. So I'm wondering, are there things that can allow you to sort of pause just long enough to create a cue before you sort of enter Alice's wonderland of hyperfocus, where you lose all track of space and time?
Like a cue of like stuff I want to learn about, or like,
well, there's that, but more of like, okay, like here's a question. Wait, is this possible that I'm going to be lost in the internet for the next, half a day?
Yeah.
Right. Because then you can, part of what we want to do is we want to, one, understand what our tendencies are, and then understand what are the ways that we can sort of accommodate or scaffold those tendencies when they don't serve us. But then how can we actually support the tendencies that are our strengths to kind of work with them, understanding that a lot of those things are a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm curious what everyone else's thoughts on this question are. Ooh, Moira's like, ooh, it looks like Brendan has some thoughts. And all right, Moira, go ahead.
Thank you. Aaron, I think a lot of us were like that when we were first diagnosed. And also, I myself had a psychology background and I had an education background. And so it was sort of narrowing a focus of a passion that I already had. So I guess that's one question I have, is like in trying to figure out whether or not it's a passion / calling, because that's what happened to me, versus something that I'm just really doing a deep dive on. What's your sense for you as far as, is this a completely new wheelhouse for you?
Yes. I've never taken a psychology class. I've never had any sort of like, even like toe in the water in this sort of thing. And so like the diagnosis, I won't say it was completely out of left field, because I always joke about it, like, oh, I'm so ADD, whatever. Like, but then I actually got it. And now it's sort of like this like conspiracy I uncovered about myself. And it's sort of this like, I'm like every single thing that I can absorb about this to try and maybe explain that like ADHD has about everything in my life, about the way I do stuff. And I find it super fascinating, but I also like don't know if like that's a path that I should continue like deeply on. Cause I've been a musician my entire life. And I don't think this is like supplanting that so much. It is just like a new big interest. And I'm not quite sure now that I'm like in the grasp if it's a thing that like will be longer, or if it's just because it's such a recent diagnosis that I'm just like really, really focused on it right now and that'll fade in the future, or what.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, can you give yourself the benefit of time to experience that?
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. And I think too, like I used to be a long distance runner, and I know runners can talk about running all day long. Like, and nobody wants to hear the level of depth that runners will go into about how far they ran. And I'm sure, like, I come from a family of musicians, like, you know, in music, there's the same thing. So I think one of the great gifts of having this knowledge and this interest here is that having a community of people to talk to this stuff about, because I know my family, their eyes started to glaze over if I brought up ADHD.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're asking yourself the right questions. You've got good awareness of, could it be this or the other? One of the things that I do, because there's no way I would have been able to get through college or university in the age of the internet, because if you have a thought, you can act on it. Right.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it just wouldn't have happened. Is I have all these thoughts, and it sounds like you do, of like, oh, I wonder about this, I wonder about that. And I have a place where I store them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to then act on them. And that helps me not continue to scroll when I'm like, okay, I'm curious about this idea, because I may not be as curious about it tomorrow.
Then I guess like, is it just a matter of like waiting for it to see if it'll fade, or like if it doesn't, then like keep pursuing it or something? Cause like, I imagine at some point, like after your diagnosis, it kind of stops being less new and like less exciting, and sort of you get used to everything. And like, is it just a matter of like finding that first before you really like you make a decision or something?
You know, on that question, you know, for me, one of the things that I share with people, that I think one of the absolute best things that I do in my own ADHD management, and I think that probably everyone here on screen probably would say the same thing for themselves, is because we work in the ADHD space, we constantly are having to think about ADHD, you know, because we need to really engage our metacognitive process, so that ability to sort of think about our thinking process, ability to be constantly evaluating, hey, is this working for me right now? Like, is this what I want to be doing right now? And so I think the more we are engaged in thinking about it, the more we are going to kind of take our life off autopilot. Because like life on autopilot, you end up crashing because we actually don't have an autopilot button that works correctly. So you might push the button, but we end up crashing and burning, right? So it's needing to really take control of the direction that we're trying to go. And part of that, like, you need to know what the flight plan is, meaning you need to understand your ADHD. And we're always learning more about it. Like I'm still learning about ADHD, and I will always be learning about ADHD, right? And how different strategies and things, because, you know, while I got a lot of stuff figured out, I still have plenty of things that I'm still working on, and I'll probably always be working on. And that's all right. It's just like thinking about what are our bigger goals, but I think that give yourself some grace, you know, allow yourself to go into the call it a time suck or a time investment. Learn what you can about ADHD. All right, Brendan, let's go on to our next question. Works better when you're unmuted. There you go.
Yeah, I fixed it. One of the things that we always kind of allude to it, but we never come out and say it. And it hasn't dawned on me until just now. We talk about how people want to learn about ADHD and like that's important. One of the reasons it's so all consuming is because you're not exactly learning about ADHD. You're learning about yourself. And that personalization of it makes it that much more interesting and that much more engaging and draws us in that much deeper. So I think that's important to kind of observe in all of this.
I think that's great. I love nuance, and that is a great nuance. All right, let's go, Aaron. I hope that was helpful for you. And
yeah, thanks a lot.
Super glad that you are here. Let's go to another question.
All right, our next question is from Jane. What is the most frustrating thing about your ADHD? Hers is definitely having to wait for stuff.
All right, this is a fun question, kind of asking us personally. Barb, want to go first?
I was unmuted and laughing. Why do you do this to me, Eric?
Because I care.
I'm watching too many other things that I just can't focus on it. I'll be honest.
Okay. So like it really like this moment is like one of those things.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Roxie, how about you?
I think it's my challenges with working memory. I feel like that's the thing that trips me up, and it's not just in one aspect. It's in every single frickin' thing I do. You know what? So let's talk memory for a second, shall we? I have the one cord that plugs directly into my computer. Then there's this other cord with the 3 prongs that needs to go into an outlet. I don't remember where I put it.
This is ADHD. All right. Let's go to Moira. Moira, what's the most frustrating thing about your ADHD?
Day-to-day, it's waiting, but impact on my life that bites me in the ass. It's impulsivity with my mouth, blurting.
All right. Thanks for sharing that. Will, what about you?
With COVID, I've kind of had this on hyperdrive the last few weeks, and it's just this like lack of executive function and not knowing what to do and just finding myself doing the wrong thing over and over again. And like, wait, I wanted to be doing this. Why am I doing this now?
Relatable for sure. MJ, how about you?
So my impulsivity comes in the form of like never saying no, which is so frustrating because then I get really, really optimistic and then I try to do stuff and then I'm like, I cannot do all of this, but my ADHD is like, but I want to do all the things right now.
Yeah.
But it's not realistic. So that's something that's frustrating and I'm still learning how to manage that. So that's fun.
Awesome. Brendan, how about you?
At the moment, it's that waiting brain concept. If you guys stumbled across this, that like when there's something big that's going to happen later, we have trouble initiating prior to. So my kids have camp, and there's a distinction here that I've noticed. Their camp ends at noon, so I have to go pick them up at noon. I drop them off at 8:30, go get them for noon. And in that window, I'm like, oh, I can't really do anything. Like I have to go pick the boys up at noon. Like I have to leave the house at 11:30 to get them. And that's like 2.5 hours or something. Like it's plenty of time to get stuff done. But what I've learned is it's because I have to go and get them. Because when they're at school and they're getting dropped off or when they're at a friend's house and getting brought home, I don't have the same phenomenon because I'm not responsible. I can't screw it up and forget to go get them because they're just going to show up at my house at some point. So that need to like, not just an event, but like to have to be on point for that event and be ready for that event, it undermines the hours leading up to it.
I think that my most frustrating overall thing about my own ADHD is probably difficulty with just transitioning between things. Whether that's leaving my office or moving on to the next thing. Like whenever I'm engaged in something, I just want more of that, right? Like instead of like, okay, like I've done this thing now for 2 hours, I can stop and move on to the next thing. But my brain just goes, no, we're having fun. Like, why would we change? Like that doesn't make sense. Like, let's just keep doing more of this, right? Like, and it's true when I'm playing pickleball. Like I will play on a Saturday for 3+ hours and then I'm like so sore afterwards. Yeah, transitioning. And I think the other thing, the big thing is, so it's not multitasking, but, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, multi-tracking, sort of this idea of, all right, I'm, kicking ass and work. I got all these things going on. My home life might be kind of falling apart or my social, life might be falling apart. I'm not doing anything there or I'm not, my self-care is maybe not great. Like, or maybe I'm really doing well on managing, the budget and finances and the home. And then I'm like, when it comes to work, I'm like, oh, what's going on there? Right. So it's like being able to actually keep all the sort of the complexities of different domains of life sort of up and running at the same time without dropping a bunch of balls and having to spend time like cleaning up the mess that I created by not attending to a certain domain of life. Right. So I think like, obviously those are my top two. Barbara, I was wondering as we were talking, did you come up with anything else?
I have not.
How about another question? And then we will take a break.
I like that. Let's answer this question from Carla. I'm 1 month away from having a baby and in serious need of working on my recently diagnosed ADHD. How can I balance these? What is a good timeline for joining a coaching group?
Brendan, want to start that?
Oh my God, don't join a coaching group because you've got enough going on with a brand new baby.
Join a mom and baby group.
Yeah. Worry about the ADHD coaching group stuff later because it's often a lot to take on.
Yeah.
That said, I would balance out learning about ADHD while navigating a baby with podcasts. I know of like 4 or 5 of them right here that are good. Because you can listen to a podcast and feed a baby at the same time. You can listen to a podcast and pretend you're sleeping while the baby sleeps at the same time. The more passive the learning, the easier it's going to be to fit it in around the baby.
Yeah. And, when you have a newborn, I mean, it's like one of the good things is you're literally focused on the next hour, for months at a time. Right. So that's a positive piece to it. And, just trying to do all the things when you're a new parent, especially if you're not sleeping because, for all the understandable reasons, it can be a real big challenge. I know one of the interesting things, I'm sure Moira could probably speak more to this and such, like everything about like women and hormones and ADHD. But one of the really fascinating things that I have learned is that for women who are breastfeeding, that like their ADHD symptoms tend to decrease during that period, which is like just fascinating to me, just from like a biological concept, like idea. So there's potentially that's something to look forward to.
Does that work? Can I get on that hormone train?
Yep.
So when you're pregnant, your body has a lot of estrogen, which helps your ADHD. When you deliver, that starts to decrease. So I have a feeling that the breastfeeding will help keep that estrogen up. But women with ADHD have a much higher rate of postpartum depression, just largely due to this drop. So asking for help and not being afraid to ask for help. Having kids was super hard for me. And I ended up having 2 kids with ADHD. And Marisol and I did an episode talking about women and girls. And we talked about what it was like, how now looking back, we could see that our children had ADHD. Both my kids took a month to learn how to breastfeed. So I think, in the mom and baby group, I met other women who had ADHD. None of us knew we had ADHD. So I think just figuring out what works for you, get to know your baby, right? Because there's so much advice that people want to give you, but taking care of yourself and asking for help, I think are super important. And then there is a bit on my website on the women's stuff I did put about postpartum with having a baby, and there'll be more in future episodes.
Thanks.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, congratulations.
I hope it all goes very well.
Yes, there's one thing that I remember a nurse saying, that the hours will seem so long and the days will seem long, but the years, they fly by. Like my son was in my arms. I swear it was yesterday, and he's going to be 10 this weekend. Like, I don't understand how that happened. I don't understand how he's going to be in 5th grade. It has happened so quickly. But I tell you, those moments, especially newborn years, it's exhausting. So enjoy it, because it won't last forever. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we got, looks like some questions on dealing with a highly competitive professional environment. We got some other stuff about recharging and self-care. So we'll answer those questions when we come back. We will be right back. Support for ADHD reWired comes from the members who join our award-winning online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Here at ADHD reWired, we call it ARC for ADHD reWired Coaching. It's an intensive program designed for adults with ADHD who want to rewrite their ADHD stories and get their ADHD rewired. Your last chance to join us for our final registration event is on Thursday, September 16th at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. But the deadline to submit all of the stuff you need to do to get your invitation to join us is 5 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, the 15th.
I think I was afraid at first. Especially with the opening, I was like, oh no, this sounds really scary. And I knew I just needed something more.
I joined this group because I am a graduate student and I was having trouble getting anything done.
I came into group a really tough cookie. I think I was skeptical and cynical and did not believe in things like you can do hard things.
I had decided to join the group because even though I had made a lot of progress with individual therapy, I just felt like my growth was plateauing.
I decided to join the group because I became aware of how much ADHD has impacted the use of my time.
Before this group, it seemed like I just couldn't get anything done, and I would do everything I could to avoid even the simplest tasks.
I joined the group for all the tricks of how to plan, and they work.
To find out that there was a whole other way of managing your ADHD with accountability and with really understanding kind of the way our minds work and how different they are, I was eager to discover what that was about.
The most important thing I've learned is what ADHD is and how it impacts my needs, and it's helped me understand like what my needs are as a person with ADHD.
Connection and support are everything. There's nothing like having a group of people where it's safe to talk about your struggles, to share the things that are hardest, to not be judged for those things, and to actually be embraced and helped for that.
My biggest takeaway actually from this was finally getting introduced to my ADHD. A few weeks into starting this, I actually formally met it. It was that voice in my head that I've heard many times before, and I always thought it just meant that I was a rebel at heart.
Having ADHD, it's so personal to you, but then to talk to other people that have it and realize that your story and your feelings and the experiences you've had are so familiar to other people, that to feel that you're part of a family or a group is amazing, and to know that they're out there and with the alumni, I think it's an amazing program.
Some of my most memorable moments were definitely just watching the personal growth within everyone in this group. And it was just so inspiring to see, and to see everyone like learn to love themselves a little bit more.
I learned the value of working in groups that I've known. Groups and communities of people committed to living fuller lives and supporting each other. It's immeasurable. It's absolutely magic.
What I did not expect was how open-hearted and giving everyone was in sharing their struggles and sharing their experience.
You listen to the testimonies on the podcast, which are great, but then when you experience it, I think there's so much more to it.
This group is like an iceberg. The surface level benefits are obvious. What lies underneath is so much more amazing and massive and powerful.
It's so heartwarming and like soul fulfilling. It just feels incredible. It feels amazing.
This course has been life-changing in helping me learn about my ADHD and gain tools to help me sculpt a more purposeful life.
And I discovered that this group and community was one of the most supportive spaces I could have asked for. I've never had better cheerleaders in my life.
This group of strangers, we got together and we came into this thing thinking we were our own special kind of broken. But we grew together, uplifted each other, and saw how we're not broken and we're not alone. And we built this beautiful community of support and love. I saw this group and I knew this was my place.
If you're thinking about joining, please do. Please do. Like a lot of people said, I wish I joined sooner or made this step sooner, because I just feel like I grew a lot personally in ways I didn't expect.
If you are thinking about joining this group, I'd highly encourage it. There was something amazingly special about growing with a group of people who all had similar struggles as I did.
I just fully believe in the power of peer support.
I was afraid it would be another expensive dead end, and I couldn't have been more wrong.
So if you're thinking about doing this group, go for it. Check out the podcast, talk to Eric, or talk to people who are available. This is the place, if you have ADHD, to be. The best is yet to come.
Those are just some of the stories that listeners just like you shared when they finished their seasons of their coaching groups. If you're ready to get your ADHD rewired and rewrite your ADHD story, then don't wait. Oh, and if you thought you missed your chance to join us this fall, then great news. We are having our final registration event on Thursday, September 16th at 9:30 a.m. Central to fill the last few spots we have in Section 2 with Coach Roxie Martin at 11 a.m. Central, and my section, Section 4, at 2:30 p.m. Central. Section 1 with Moira and Section 3 with me are both full. Really don't wait. These fall groups just might be the one thing that you can do for your ADHD to get set up for the new year. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on that big orange button to receive instructions on how you can register for one of the last few spots in our 26th season. Registration is by invitation only, so take the time to take action now. Again, go to coachingrewired.com and then click the orange button for the fall coaching groups to get instructions sent to your email on how you can get registered for our upcoming registration event on Thursday, September 16th at 9:30 a.m. Central at 7:30 a.m. Pacific. And if you feel like you're still waiting for your invitation and know you've submitted your information, it might not be a bad idea just to fill that out again, just in case you had a typo or something when you signed up to get the invitation. Every season, our coaching members work together and learn how to ask better questions, get curious, plan for their short-term and long-term goals, and discover that they don't have to navigate life with their ADHD alone. Yes, you will learn some amazing ADHD-friendly skills, but the most impactful thing that has come out of our coaching groups time and time again is the power of community and how it helps all of us reach our goals together. So whether you're new to the podcast or you've been listening for a while and you want to join our award-winning coaching and accountability groups, you can learn more by going to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. And we are back. All right. We have a question from Mariana. Mariana, what is your question?
As a startup co-founder, you're constantly in the startup world. You're constantly having to participate in competitions and make presentations to investors, open innovation programs. So you're constantly being faced with rejection because it's a highly competitive environment. But the problem that I have, and currently I'm facing, is that I'm finding myself avoiding to participate in initiatives and programs that we could apply in order to progress in my business, because I'm anticipating rejection and the anxiety and the stress that I might feel if I'm rejected. So my question is basically that. I don't know if it's clear, if I provided enough context, but how to deal in a practical way when it happens.
Yep.
So that's it.
All right. So there's a lot there, and I love this question. I love, entrepreneurship, and I just think it's an exciting journey because it's all these calculated risks. And I think that the first thing to recognize is that when you're looking at competition, what makes competition hard and exciting is it's more about you're competing with your own fears and your own kind of upper limits. And you're doing that against maybe other people. But really what makes it fierce is you're challenging yourself, right? So it's not just about competing against somebody else. In your question, one of the things that kind of came up for me was that, and I don't know if this is folklore, but I've read this story so many times in different entrepreneurship books. This idea of this guy who was going around selling door-to-door salesmen, selling knives. And he figured out that he only gets one yes for every 30 no's. So he kind of spun that idea on its head and said, all right, I got to go after all those no's, get those 30 as quickly as possible so I can go get that yes. And so I think it's looking at is there a risk that you're not going to win the bid or you're not going to get the thing that you're trying to do here? Absolutely. But you're going to guarantee it if you don't do the thing, right? So it's can you do everything that you think you can do and at the same time understand that it might not go your way? Or do you want to seal your own fate by not doing anything, right? I mean, that's because that really is kind of the scenarios that you're looking at. And so it's trying to so many of these things begin with our headspace, right? It's what's our mindset kind of going into these kinds of things? Because it's not easy stuff and not everyone can do this kind of stuff. So kudos to you for taking on something that sounds pretty challenging. My one other question for you is, do you love what you're doing?
Yes, I do. And I think I'm good at it. And it's really hard, really, really hard. But thank you for answering my question and for giving me the opportunity to participate.
You bet. Thanks for the question and good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. Brendan, I saw that your hand. Do you want to respond to that and then we'll go to another question? And you are muted.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's like you're new at this, Brendan. Come on.
At least I'm doing a good job of muting myself. One of the things that makes rejection so hard is the story that we tell ourselves about why we were rejected. And we don't know what's true most of the time. So that story can be, oh, they hate me and they will never work with me and they think that I'm a terrible person or whatever, which is super undermining and anxiety inducing and ruins us. Or the story can be, that person was in a bad mood today and I was just unlucky enough to get him on a bad day. Or they just had very different needs from what I'm offering, right? So if we change the story and make it one that serves us rather than one that undermines us, it's easier to take that risk the next time because we're not ruined by the story that we told ourselves. And if we don't know the truth anyway, and we're not going to find out what the truth is anyway, it doesn't hurt to tell a truth, to tell a lie, which is what we're doing when we make up a story, to tell a lie that's nice to us as opposed to one that's mean to us.
There's a lot of validity to that. All right. That's great. Anyone else want to add to that? All right. Let's go to Ash.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So my question was, sometimes I get burnt out from doing productive things. But when I feel burnt out, I know exactly what I need to do to recharge. And it's usually some sort of fun or leisurely activity that's relaxing or engaging. But if I still feel like I need to do more things, I don't feel like I have the right to do the things that recharge me. So I end up in this weird limbo where I'm like staring at my phone and both not doing anything productive and also not enjoying myself.
Yes. All right. So this is something that's really interesting. It's something that I noticed I've struggled with over the years and gotten better at, but just sort of being very mindful. I remember a couple of years ago, when I started to change my summer schedule to sort of give myself more time to do the types of things that I could do during the summer, one of them being playing disc golf. And I remember that it was a midday, mid of the week. They're playing disc golf at like 10 or 11 in the morning and was feeling really guilty about it. And I'm like, wait a minute, like I actually planned this. Like this was all part of our plan to help me kind of recharge. And so what I did with that, I just acknowledged the feeling and just sort of look at that as, oh, those are old scripts. That's the old wiring of me telling myself I need to do all of my work first before I can do anything that I find enjoyable. Right. Because like that is what leads to burnout. Right. Like we can't only do the work. We can't only be focusing on the to-do list. Like, there's something that we talk about in our coaching groups that like, this is not just an ADHD thing. Nobody gets everything done on their to-do list. This includes neurotypical people. And so I think the story though that we tell ourselves is, oh, because we have ADHD, like we have so much more to do and we have to just keep on working to sort of make up for, our lack of productivity because we were, whatever it is, what we were doing. But like it doesn't really work that way when we're looking at the big picture of getting things done. Will, what are your thoughts on this one?
I was going to definitely echo what you were saying there, but also just this whole plan this time off first, because we always end up being like, well, I could do more if I do this. But if you have like, oh, I'm going to have to go to do this thing, like, especially if you planned it with other people, then you're going to go and do it. And you might feel a little guilt in the beginning, but that's something that we're just going to have to keep working on. We're never going to completely escape that mental trap of thinking that, oh, I could do more.
Yeah.
We could do more, but there's diminishing returns without getting that recharge time.
And well, is your experience too, because this is something that helps me when I am feeling that guilty feeling. I'll ask myself, all right, so guilt is supposed to help guide behavior for doing something that's sort of like that is counter to our values. Am I doing anything that's counter to my values right now? Am I doing anything that's quote unquote wrong? And if it's no, it's and often that question I answer is no, not at all. In fact, I'm actually doing exactly what I value and want to be doing. And it's just sort of this, like, I can look at that as a sort of a remnant of, old belief patterns.
Yeah. And as you do take the time off more and more, you'll find you start building up that mental reservoir of ideas of, hey, when I came back, I was so much better.
Yeah.
I've done this a lot with like taking breaks at work and then going for a walk. And at the time I'm like, I should just power through and write. And it never works. But then when I go on the walk and I come back, I'm like, that was super easy. All my thoughts are clarified now.
Nice. MJ?
That's a hard one, to like not feel bad, to just relax and like give yourself the permission to. And I kind of want to echo what Will said, is planning that time ahead is important. My issue has been protecting that time after it's been planned and not moving it just because something else comes up that you think might be important. Like if the house ain't burning, like you don't need to tend to it. And I still need to remind myself of that. And anytime that I have actually allowed myself to take a break, like I've never regretted it, but I never remember that I don't regret it until it's too late. So I guess my biggest thing is plan that time ahead and protect the crap out of it.
Yeah.
Because you will feel so much better if you do.
Well, I always found this so kind of humorous. You know, one of the books that we require all of our coaching group members to read before even starting group is the book The One Thing. Now, I've listened to this book, I think now 6 times, and it wasn't until the 5th time listening to it that I actually catch the part where they talk about the first thing that you plan when you're planning your year is your time off and vacation time. I missed that the first 4 times that I, which was, you know, not surprising, I guess, to me, that because I've been struggling with taking time off. But yeah, it is. And the whole idea of like, don't think you deserve it, but yet once you do, not feeling bad because it feels good, you feel recharged. It takes kind of getting those reps in of knowing that like you deserve to have self-care, like whether or not you got this stuff done or not. Roxie, do you want to add anything to that?
The only thing is that when MJ was talking about protecting the time, it just reminded me how important it is for me to write down a really compelling why, because I don't remember, or I do look at the thing on my list and think, oh, that's like superfluous, or that is a thing that can go. But in protecting it, having that clarity, like why did I prioritize this in the first place, and what's the benefit I'm going to get out of it, I think is probably something that I should flesh out more.
All right. Do we have another question here?
We do. Actually, I'm going to bring up Ryan.
Hello.
All right, Ryan. What is your question?
Well, I'm currently holding a newborn that my wife had about 3 weeks ago. And this week I've took a couple weeks off to be with my wife and the baby and starting to get back into work. And man, I'm just so overwhelmed. Just hundreds of emails and so many tasks, things to pick back up on. And it's just been hard to get into it. I feel like I'm just avoiding it rather than face it and dive right in. I find myself just, doing pretty much anything else, sometimes productive things and sometimes just scrolling on my phone, wanting to do the things, but then finding myself unable to start. And my wife also has ADHD, and she's had some postpartum depression, which I was pleased to hear. Moira mentioned that earlier. She struggled with that some this time, worse than our first child. And so that's been challenging as well. So I'm just, I need some help. How do I get back into this?
Are you sleeping?
No, not enough. That's for sure.
Okay. So I think to me, that's going to be your first order of business is figure out like, how do you guys with a newborn, like balance the sleep? Because if you are not sleeping, like your brain it's mush. Like it's those executive functions that you need to do the things you can want to do it. And if there's any resistance, like your brain it's not going to cooperate.
I'm going to jump in as a father of identical twins.
Yeah.
Swap nights. That's what my wife and I did. She took a night and I slept, and then I took a night and she slept. Breastfeeding messes this up depending on what's going on with that. Yeah. But wow, did that make a difference in our lives? So if that's a thing that you can logistically manage, I can't recommend it enough. It's not a perfect solution, right, but it can work.
And I would say even like experiment, like whether it's an every other night or maybe you take a few days, then she takes a few days, like figure out a rhythm that will work best for you. Ryan, are you self-employed or do you have an employer?
I do have an employer and I'm working from home at the moment. Okay. So, whenever I was in the office, having other people around really helped me get things done, the little bit of social pressure. Working from home is also, taking that away to some degree.
All right. Have you asked your boss for any help with this or shared that you're struggling a bit with tackling these things?
No, I guess I hadn't. And my boss also doesn't know that I have ADHD. It's something that I haven't been comfortable talking about. And I'm sure you understand that with the amount of stigma that goes along with it. It's just not very well understood. But that is something I could definitely pursue.
Is your boss a parent?
He is, yes. He actually has two girls just like I do.
Play the new dad role. Like say like you're tired, like you guys aren't sleeping. Because they can relate with that and say, I go to like look at my email and my brain just doesn't know what to even do. Like, and see if they can help you out with that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because if you want to do like have someone do a real life sort of ADHD simulation, have them not sleep for a couple of days with a newborn. That's kind of what ADHD can feel like. With just being able to organize even the most basic things, it just feels so hard.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I hope that's helpful for you. And definitely check out Adult Study Hall if you haven't done that. If you're working from home, there are a lot of people who are kind of in your boat who are finding that to be really helpful.
I will. Thank you.
All right, Ryan. Thanks so much. And best of luck to you. Congratulations. All right. Let's do one more and then let's take a quick break.
All right. This is kind of a fun one before break.
Okay.
Alexis said after this Zoom, I think I will go and see the new Black Widow movie. What kind of movies do you like?
All right. Who wants to answer that one first?
Any of you watch a movie at home in one sitting?
Yeah.
I can do it, but does it happen?
It all depends, when and I know I'm pretty sure she's listening right now. When my girlfriend asked me to watch a movie that has foreign subtitles at 7 p.m., that didn't work so well. So there's that. But the question was, what kind of movies do we like? I like weird, sort of absurd. Like my very favorite movie of all time is Death to Smoochie. Like the cast is amazing. Like if you've never seen this, like don't look at Rotten Tomatoes. They don't know what they're talking about. Like this movie is just amazing when you have like puppets that it looks like Sesame Street, sort of like a kid show, but it's like vulgar and amazing.
It's a movie.
It is the only movie I've ever actually rewound. So this is when I first watched it. I was VHS, rewound it, and immediately watched it again. I've never done that with any other movie in my entire life.
Really?
Yes.
That's the Smoochie?
Yes, that's the Smoochie. Like I was like, it was one of those movies I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard. It was so good. Or MJ, what's your favorite?
What? Oh, I kind of like thrillers, and I could rewatch. For some reason, out of the Ocean's movies, I could rewatch Ocean's 13 over and over. I don't know why. I just really, really like that movie. And I'm still kind of stuck in like cartoon land with some movies like Atlantis or The Emperor's New Groove. For some reason, they're just like lighthearted, happy, feel good kind of movies that I can just play in the background. Otherwise, I'm just watching documentaries and stuff or true crime things.
Okay. All right. Will, what's your fave?
I was like thinking like I've mostly watched like kids movies the last few years, and I do enjoy a lot of animated movies. Like the recent Mitchell's versus the Machines was fantastic. But yeah, I look for things that are comedy, kind of more lighthearted stuff, nothing too heavy.
All right. And so Moira, have you gotten through a movie before?
Yeah, I love movies. It has to have a story. If I had to pick one movie, it would be Pride and Prejudice, and I like both versions. But I do really like period pieces, and I like things that have mysteries, but they're not scary.
It sounds like you need like highbrow stuff that you really have to think about.
I think it is to keep me engaged.
Yeah.
But I do like good rom-coms.
Okay.
Including the teen ones. Those are fun.
All right.
Make you feel good.
Brandon, what do you got?
Nothing about my movies is going to be surprising. So
Superhero movies.
All of the Marvel movies, right? Like I majored in comics in college. So all of the Marvel movies, surprise, Star Wars, fantasy stuff. Like that's my jam.
Okay.
But I do also love heist movies, and I'll watch Ocean's 11 like as many times as you want me to.
Nice.
I'm not a fan of Ocean's 12 though. That one was less exciting.
Yeah, Ocean's 12 was kind of boring for me too. 11 or 13.
But I feel like I need to watch Death to Smoochie because I think I'll understand Eric better if I do. So I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yes, if you want to understand what I find funny, that will. Yes. Oh my gosh, like I want to go like just like end this right now and go watch it. We should have a big watch party. Like we're gonna move this Q&A to a watch party. Roxie, what about you?
I like comedies that take me by surprise and that are really quirky. So the Taika Waititi did Jojo Rabbit, and I didn't want to see it at first because it was kind of like a comedy and it seemed like it was lighthearted about Hitler, but it actually ended up being such a great movie.
I love that movie.
Interesting. Okay. All right. And Barb, what's your fave?
I really like comedies a lot. And honestly, I love action movies. Like if the boys want to watch Fast and Furious, like I like those movies, and I like quirky too, like Umbrella Academy.
Oh,
I really got into that. Yeah, Netflix.
I like to see. I've been much more into getting into series versus actual movies because they're like short movies that you can like take breaks in.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, my internet froze for a minute, so I didn't hear anything.
Your hand was up.
I just was going to add on that I also really like terrible movies.
Oh.
Like Tremors 6 or
like movies that are so bad they're good.
Yeah. A favorite one for a long time was this movie called Hard to Get to Hawaii because it has a scene where someone puts like razor blades and the edge of a Frisbee and throws it to, like, I don't remember, maim or kill someone.
Are those
Have you seen Five-Headed Shark? Yeah. My kids went through a bad shark movie phase during COVID where they watched like all of the bad shark movies that have ever been made.
All of the Sharknadoes.
They actually tapped out on Sharknado with 1 or 2 movies left, but they did Five-Headed Shark and like Poseidon Rex and all kinds of stuff.
Hilarious.
All right, let's do this. Let's take one more quick break, and we will be right back with a little time for maybe about 2, possibly 3 more questions. But we will be right back. Would you like someone to do your laundry with? Could you use the company while you pay your bills or clean out your fridge or while you're writing a paper or planning? If you could benefit from some real-time accountability to do the things that you need to do with other adults with ADHD, then come and try our Adult Study Hall membership community. Access to the Adult Study Hall membership community is free for the first week, then only $19.99 a month after that. Your membership gives you instant access to Adult Study Hall 24/7 or ASH 24/7, a dedicated Zoom room that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Members have cooked a dinner, filed their taxes, made phone calls that they really didn't want to make, studied for exams and passed them, and so much more. But if a bit more structure is more your speed, your membership also gives you access to our facilitated sessions or our ASH Plus sessions. Join our 2-hour clean and decluttering sessions every Sunday. Got writer's block? Then join Barb from ADHD reWired on Mondays at 4 p.m. Central for a 90-minute writing session. Tuesdays and Thursdays to get moving with our workout together sessions starting at 10 a.m. Central. And every Thursday are our Task Buster sessions so you can focus on the tasks you've been pushing aside and finally get it crossed off your to-do list. Looking for a new job? Need some help with that resume or cover letter? Join our Career Accelerator sessions and work with a HR specialist for job searches, getting your resume done, writing cover letters, and anything else career related. And once a month, I host a 2-hour Pomodoro dance party. And the next one is this Thursday, September 16th, where we are going to work together for 2 hours. And every 25 minutes, we're going to take a 5-minute break and get our groove on and dance. It is always a lot of fun and really productive. And I find these sessions really helpful for me to get some of my dreaded tasks done too. So come join me. And we will be adding more ASH Plus sessions soon. You could see the dates, times, and descriptions of all of our Adult Study Hall sessions by going to adultstudyhall.com. Your Adult Study Hall membership includes access to our ASH Plus sessions and ASH 24/7. It's only $19.99 a month, and you can try it risk-free for a week. If you don't like it, cancel it before the trial is over. Once you join, add the times to your calendar that you want to go. And I really want to encourage you to hop into the ASH 24/7 room within the first 24 hours of you joining. And try one of our ASH Plus sessions during your first week. Like all tools, they tend to work a lot better when we actually use them. So come join us. Go to adultstudyhall.com. That's adultstudyhall.com. It's more than body doubling. It's more than virtual co-working. It's Adult Study Hall by ADHD reWired. That's adultstudyhall.com. Happening today, if you are listening to this episode early enough on the day it came out, the ADHD reWired podcast family wants to invite you to our next live Q&A on Tuesday, September 14th at 12:30 p.m. Central. And yes, that is today. If you are listening to this again on the day that it came out, you can join me and all the other podcasters on the ADHD reWired Podcast Network to ask your ADHD-related questions. Or just get a little bit ADHD ourselves and tune in live before this Q&A session turns into a podcast episode next month. If you are new to ADHD reWired, I'm not the only one with a show. Go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network to find the rest of us. For tips and strategies and really satisfying dad jokes in 20 minutes or less, check out Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb. If you are a parent with ADHD or have an ADHD household, ADHD Essentials with Brenda Mahan is a great resource for parents and educators. For a personal audio journal sharing her ADHD experiences as an Asian Canadian, check out ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens. And if you're a late diagnosed woman who is curious about how hormones affect your ADHD, then check out the ADHD friendly lifestyle with ADHD rewired coach Moira Maybin. And coming soon, our dad joke king Will Curb of Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD rewired coach extraordinaire Roxie Martin are teaming up to launch their new show called Wait, what was the question? It's coming soon, we promise. I actually met with them this last week and recorded something with them. In the meantime, check out all of our podcasts, and a huge thank you from all of us for listening, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing all of our podcasts with the ADHD community. Join our live monthly Q&A with all of us from the ADHD Rewired podcast family, and check out our shows by going to our website. Go to ADHDrewired.com and click on podcasts and choose the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network from the drop-down menu. You can also go to the site and click on events to join our live Q&A. That's ADHDrewired.com. Thank you to all of our listeners, old and new, for joining us. We wouldn't be here without you. Thank you. All right, let's just jump right back into it. I want to respect everyone's time here. All right, do we have another question?
We do have another question from Pamela. She was diagnosed over 10 years ago as an adult with ADD, and she's tried different stimulants. And actually, her question has to do with, is there any medication that she can take while she's breastfeeding that's breastfeeding friendly? Anybody have any ideas on that one?
So there is some research into that now. And where can I share that when I can find it? It really comes down to weighing any of the risks for you managing your ADHD with the personal and I think typically fairly low risk. And it depends on the medications. Because obviously some have more of an impact than others, but there's definitely people who have found it safe to take medication. But again, it depends on people's medical history. So maybe I will make an episode page on my podcast and post it there, and it'll just be links to the research that I've recently looked at.
Great. And I know too that with any sort of psychiatric medications while in pregnancy, kind of what Moira was saying, there is that risk reward. You have to sort of look at, like, are there potential risks to the baby? Like, there may be. Are those risks greater or less than what would happen to this, like the mom under stress, and how that would affect the developing child if the mother wasn't taking medication? So it's like, I mean, it's not an easy decision by any sense of the imagination. But there are, I mean, I've had clients who worked very closely with doctors who they followed them and they were able to take medications for ADHD that may be counterindicated during pregnancy, but the person's ADHD was such that the doctor thought it was better for mother and then child for this mother to continue on the medication even while pregnant, even knowing the risk. They thought the risks of not being on the medication would be greater. So yeah, it's definitely the research is still it's a newer field, which is why it's so important to also find a doctor who really knows you and understands kind of what your scenario may be. Anyone want to add to that? No? Brendan?
Also, pharmacists are a great resource to talk to. And maybe you said that and I spaced out, but I only heard doctor. Pharmacists are awesome and don't get asked questions enough.
They can be. I would say there's also pharmacists who will, pass judgment upon your medication, and which that's a whole nother topic of conversation. I'm sure most of us have probably experienced that at some point while picking up our stimulant medications.
I guess not me.
Not you. All right. All right. Do we have any other questions?
We actually don't have any in the queue at the moment. I bet there's tons of questions out there.
There are probably tons of questions. Oh, and here comes one just in time from Christy.
All right.
Do you want me to read it out loud?
Go for it.
ADHD, brain injury, hormones, anxiety. I'm feeling a dysfunctional mess. Coaching, therapy, meds, techniques haven't been successful thus far, and I'm feeling down more frequently. It's getting harder financially to support myself. I'm struggling even with lower paid work. PCP next trying for disability, and I'm okay with that. I do a lot of research, not sure what question to put here. So it sounds like she's just struggling,
Mm.
broadly
Sounds like my
speaking.
sister,
What has helped her?
my twin sister, brain injury,
Mhm.
all of those things.
What's helped your sister?
Me, her, what? No, I said it sounds like me. Like
Oh,
she's
your
my twin sister.
hypothetical twin
Christy,
sister.
yes,
Got it.
yes.
We're now on the same page.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know you had a twin sister.
Yeah. Here's a question to answer her question. I mean, number one, putting yourself first and being kind to yourself. But how many of us did help not work until you had the right help?
That's a great question.
So when you look at that list of coaching, therapy, med techniques haven't been successful. All the therapy in the world didn't work for me until I had a therapist who understood ADHD and eating disorders.
Yeah.
I would ask, what are your protective factors, right? Like what does your support look like? What community support networks exist that you could be taking advantage of? And that doesn't need to be mental health stuff. That can be, are you involved in a church or synagogue or like volunteering somewhere and being a part of the community, which I recognize is hard during COVID. But that having a social support network is going to help navigate some of this other stuff, if for no other reason than it's going to increase the number of resources you can tap into with regard to people who know people or people who know things and can point you in directions. It doesn't have to be resources in terms of money or something. What does family look like? Is that a place where you can find support? Those are the thoughts that are jumping to my mind.
I'm wondering about the healing from the brain injury because it's a 2-year process. Right? It's a long time. And we have a hard time waiting. Yeah. A simple one is going outside. I know it sounds trivial, but huge. I used to actually, Brendan and Eric, I used to walk and listen to this episode and other episodes, but I remember after Chad's, a couple months after my brain injury, because it kept my brain engaged enough that it wouldn't hurt.
I guess like the last part when Chrissy mentions research is, for me, I always felt stuck when I got stuck in research and didn't test out the tools and stuff that were available, because something in me was like, oh, well, this probably won't work. This probably won't work. And then I get stuck in, well, what's going to work next and what's going to work next. And I think that that's a hard thing to get out of, especially when you are feeling stuck, is you just want to stay in that research rabbit hole. Some days I still get stuck in there just wondering what the next thing is going to be. And it takes so much work and so much brain power to try and just take action on one thing and stick with it. But when I do stick with one thing, even if I think it might be silly or ridiculous or feeling like I need help, it's nothing to be ashamed of. And finding the people that will encourage you to take action on something without being judgmental and without you being judgmental or, kind of self-deprecating towards yourself as you're going through this process of what I can only anticipate is healing. When that time comes, I hope you can get out of whatever rut this is, because it's hard.
Yeah, and I know that when you're in struggle, I mean, Moira and I had a meeting last week virtually. And it was last Wednesday, and I've been riding the struggle bus a little bit. A little bit might be an understatement. Last week, and so we had a noon meeting, and I just hopped onto Zoom. And it was at like noon 02, and I told her that I literally just rolled out of bed. I was just having a hard time doing anything that day. And one of the things that Moira said to me that was so helpful was, what if, yes, you have all these things that you need to get done. What if you could just genuinely accept that that's not going to happen today? And I wrestled with that for a bit. But once I was able to make that mindset shift, I was like, it sort of has this paradoxical effect. Like, one, you begin to relax, and then it's like, oh, and I can now do some of these things. And so it's like when we try so hard to make something work that's not working, like we ended up just sort of like grinding our gears, and it gets harder.
Connected to that, sometimes I treat my inner voice, the one that's like, you should go do this. Sometimes I treat it like my boss that I don't like, and I let the oppositionality part of ADHD kind of win every now and then. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And I just kind of like tell that voice off if I am where you were last week. And that's okay. You're allowed to do that every now and then.
Yeah, for sure. For those of you who heard Moira and my episode a couple weeks ago, or a month or so ago for listening to this on the podcast about travel and vacation. I wanted to share just a quick update and some lessons learned. So lessons learned from this past weekend going to see fish and camping. Lesson number one, that if you're doing any traveling that involves like being somewhere at a certain time, like a concert, check to see if you're crossing time zones. Oops. Lesson number two, if you are going camping and get something that is like a blow-up mattress, don't wait till the morning of leaving to test to make sure it's going to work. Lesson number three, if you live in a large metropolitan area and you're leaving on a Friday, don't leave at 2 p.m. There are more lessons in there, but I wanted to just share those with you. And I also wanted to let everyone know, because I know that when Moira and I talked, I was waiting to hear about fish in Mexico, and I am going. I got the tickets.
All right.
So that's exciting. Okay. We have one last quick question, and then we are going to wrap it up with Anne.
All right. Are there any go-tos anyone has developed for dealing with transitions? I'm very newly diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm able to identify so many things that have vexed me for years, but I am now trying to find and create solutions for them. So go-tos, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in making your mess your message. And of what I said earlier, that transitions are my hardest area of my ADHD. One of the places that I go to is I go to MJ. MJ helps me transition out of the office. I'll be in
because I set a timer for you.
Yep.
And I'm like, so
I'll be in adult study hall and I'll post, all right, I'm now beginning the transition process. And then I message MJ when I'm actually in the car. She'll set a timer for me. And just knowing that like is a little bit of help and kind of motivation to kind of get myself going, or I'll call my girlfriend or somebody else, like, because transitions are hard. So it's sharing that transition piece with somebody else can be helpful. If you have a timer that forces you to actually get up, like if you have a hard time transitioning and if the gravitational pull of your chair gets heavier when you have to transition, make sure that your timer is not on your phone. Make it something where you have to actually get out of your chair. Because usually once we just get moving, we tend to be okay. It's just getting from not moving to moving, which is so hard. Those are a couple of mine. Roxie, what do you got?
The two things that I use to help me are avoiding context switching wherever possible. So I find that transitions, just too many transitions, no matter how many strategies I try to employ to address them, is not going to work for me. So significantly limiting. And then the point of performance stuff is kind of how I do it. So wherever I am, I try to do everything I can do there before I go anywhere else that's going to take my attention away and draw me into something else. So those are my two safeguards, I guess.
Awesome. Moira.
One of the best ones on my computer is I have Break for Eyes, and it comes on every 20 minutes. I can turn it off if I want to, like say we're doing this, but I found that it keeps me, there's something about having that, or every 20 minutes, something that it sort of stops me from going deeper and deeper in. So it makes it easier to transition later. And then building in more buffer time. So building in like a 15-minute transition from stopping something so that I have a warning of, okay, I need to be wrapping this activity up, with repeated pokes on my watch timer.
Yeah. Can I add a nuance to that?
Mm-hmm.
So the transition for going to bed has always been a struggle for me. So one of the alarms that I'll have on my phone is not actually an alarm to go to bed, but it's an alarm to let me know that the transition to begin to get ready to go to bed is coming up in 20 minutes. Like, so I don't have to do anything at all with that. It's just like here's for your information. This is coming up.
Yes.
Right. And so that kind of helps.
Kind of like what a nice parent could do, but as a child or as an adult, we would find it really annoying. So it's like hey, heads up, this is coming your way. Yeah, ways to have that. I use Alexa for that too. Have a drink. It'll be refreshing. You can program what you're going to say it.
All right. Brendan, you got one?
I've got head game stuff for transitions because I break transitions into pieces. It's sort of two different pieces, two different categories of pieces. The first is every transition is really two transitions because you have to transition out of what you're doing and then into whatever is coming next.
Love that.
So, and like Eric, your example of leaving work, you have to transition out of work and then into commuting and then out of commuting and into being home, right? So that's even more transitioning. The other thing that I like to play with transitions is that there's 3 different kinds of transitions. There's physical transition, right? Moving physically from one location to another, or positions, or whatever the case may be, which is what you were talking about, right? Like just get moving. But then there's also emotional transition and intellectual transition. So like if you've got a kid playing Minecraft and you're able to get them out of the living room and to the kitchen table, but they're still all frustrated and aggravated, they haven't emotionally transitioned out of the stimulation of that game yet, right? Or if they're at the kitchen table and chill, but they keep talking about Minecraft for the whole dinner, they haven't cognitively or intellectually transitioned out of Minecraft yet and into whatever's going on at dinner, which might be okay.
Have you been spying on my son and I's family?
No, dude, it's just what I do for a living. It's just my whole deal.
Oh, God. Okay, keep going. This is great.
That's it. It's important to pay attention to those. It's really 6 things, right? Because there's 3 different categories of transitions. There's 2 different transitions that has to happen. So you need 6 different things to occur for what we think of as one transition. And oftentimes when we're looking at it, like from the parent to child perspective, and even an adult perspective, we think that if we've made the physical transition from one location to the other, we're done and we've transitioned. But probably not. There's probably some emotional lag and some cognitive lag that we still have to deal with before we can get to the thing that we're supposed to be engaging with in that new room.
I mean, it's great. I love that. I think we should end right there. All right. We do this every second Tuesday of the month, same time, same place. So if this was your first time, I'm so happy. And we are also happy that you joined us today. We hope to see you next month. Make sure you are registered for them so you get those emails automatically sent to you to remind you that we're doing this. And I think that's it. Thank you. We'll see you next month. Okay, so wait, we ended and then we're back, and sorry MJ for having to figure out how to edit this in. So the last 3 months we've made this decision that Will was going to actually end the podcast with a dad joke, and I forgot the last 2 times, and we had to come back after we ended the podcast to actually record the dad joke. So Will, you're gonna bring this one home for us with a joke.
Are you up to a dad joke? I mean, you did volunteer, but also
yeah, I'd like to. Well, 2 things. First, I just want to make sure to encourage everyone to get vaccinated and keep wearing their masks because these variants suck. So just got that. And also,
that's not funny. That's for real.
I know, right? But I have two options for dad jokes. We can have one that was in the vein of last month, which nobody got, or I have another one.
Don't make me think about that one again. I tried for like days after that one and I still didn't get it.
Okay. What do you call a line of men waiting to get haircuts? A barbecue.
Oh my God.
I said buzz cue and it didn't make any sense.
Oh my God.
I like it.
A barbecue. Okay. And you said that, was there one more?
Well, yeah, there's the one I had that was in the vein from last month, which was, so there's a guy walking around a party and he needs to get a drink. And so who says, oh, you got to go get in line over there. But when he got there, there was no punchline.
Dude, come on.
That one's better. I like that.
We'll get you back here next month, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Will. Feel better. And we'll see you. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls And $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you're a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.